Hello and welcome to Fallawsophy. I'm your host, Jennifer Fallaw-Doering, and tonight we are talking about paranormal activity. She saw him. I'll tell you what that's about in a minute. But first, I'd like to let you know that my philosophy is to believe in infinite possibilities, and I think you should too. So we're off the cuff tonight. I don't have any mystery of the world that I'm solving or anything like that. It's right before Memorial Day weekend, and I just kind of wanted to share some stories with you. Memorial Day, we honor those who have passed, especially those who died fighting for our freedom. So, and a lot of people suffer from not really believing or constantly searching for facts that support the theory that we do live on, and we absolutely do. I'm going to share some stories with you tonight that I experienced. And, I was a believer before that. You couldn't really convince me otherwise, but these stories really set it solid with me. And the kind of paranormal activity I'm going to address is not ghosts, but experiences with loved ones who had recently passed away or come to visit. It doesn't mean that they're earthbound. It doesn't mean that they're stuck in any way. It just means that shortly after they pass, their vibration is acclimating, rising, acclimating to the other side, and it's much easier to see them. It's easier for them to move objects. It's easier for them to do things with objects, electronics, things like that. I call myself an angelic medium because, basically anybody's a medium who speaks to spirit of any kind and passes on messages. I primarily speak with, God, Jesus, the archangels. And if people come to me and want me to talk to their loved ones who have passed away, I do that. If I encounter an earthbound spirit, I try to cross them over. I talk to them, the angels and I, but I always work with the angels. I can see them, and the spirits as well. I tune in and I tune out. And, I'm not your average medium. A lot of mediums have been seeing spirits since they were born, and sometimes it's frightening, and sometimes it's annoying, and sometimes it's beautiful. But, I don't really recall seeing a lot of spirits when I was a child. I just remember being very connected to nature, to the animals, avid dreamer. Most of the information that I would get psychically before I had children was through dreams. There was this weird time, I did have experiences when I was a kid. My mom and I think my grandfather were psychic. That they didn't talk about it like that because very Catholic. They just said, well, I get feelings about things. And, if mom got a feeling about something and started to freak out and tell you not to go, you don't go. Because I remember she did that with my father one time and freaked out. And she rarely did that. She wasn't like that. My mom wasn't like that. Very rational, college educated, very smart woman. But I remember one time when they told me a story that when I was a baby, my dad had to take my grandmother to the hospital. And the grandfather had to be with her in the back seat of this car. Okay. So Dad had to drive the car we're talking about. And some of you have heard the story before, but just bear with me. Big, must have been in the 70s, big heavy metal, 4-door car. I don't know what kind it was. I remember it was long. Mom freaked out, told him not to go. I mean, cried. My mother cried. The sky was falling. Okay. And he said, I have to go. And so he drove them, and he was on the 805 freeway, the overpass in San Diego, and they got in a car accident with a semi. And, Dad, I've told the story, it doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. My dad, skinny little dude, 6 foot tall, adrenaline, I guess they said it was adrenaline. I don't think so. I think it was more than that. Had to rip the front seat out of the car and threw it. Not a strong guy to get his parents out of the back seat. But, after hearing that story growing up, if Mom told us not to go somewhere, which she rarely did, I could probably count on one hand the times in my life when it happened. And you didn't go. And, it was kind of weird. My grandfather, we were always having puppies and kittens, and we had kind of a small little, we just had couple acres, East San Diego, and, horses and chickens and dogs and cats and all kinds of stuff. And I remember one time the puppies, I think it was the puppies. My dog had puppies, and my grandfather came over. He was like the wise one-liner Catholic guy, and he'd give you one sentence and make you think for the rest of your life. And so he comes over because one of the puppies was born with all the organs on the outside of its body. So he's just like, oh, well, we'll just do that. So he just he gave the puppy some whiskey. Okay. And cuts the skin, puts it all in, sews him up, and the puppy lived. We gave it to the neighbor. It lived long life. It's just weird things like that, and then I have lots of dreams, and my mom told us the story of the house that we lived in when my sister and I were babies. We were 11 months apart. And she said that her and Dad were going to go out of town. And she left us with her parents. But the house, before she left the house, every time she stood in front of, she was watering the flowers and plants. And when she would go in front of the nursery window, she'd start crying. She'd move away from there and she'd stop crying. And she'd go in front of the nursery window and she'd start crying. And so this is the story she told. And she said that house was haunted. And said that while they were gone, vandals just vandalized the house. They broke the window of the nursery and they set the curtains on fire, set the house on fire. And this, as the story goes, there were 2 white cribs in the middle of the room. And pretty big room. And the fire chief told her when she got home that they had no idea how the fire stopped because it burnt everything in the room except for a perfect circle on the ground around the 2 cribs. What a story, right? But what I didn't realize until later in life is that when she told me this story, I could see the room. And I could see the cribs. And I could see the man in the house that stopped the fire. And she'd tell us stories of how she would be sleeping at night and feel this cold breath on the back of her neck. And my dad, shortly out of Vietnam, would get up and grab this spear. I don't know why he had a spear. He had stuff he got over there, and go running down the hallway in the middle of the night in his underwear after this, thinking that somebody was in the house. And they were walking and stuff. And so as she would tell me these stories, I never said anything about it, that I saw the man. I could see the man. And I didn't really clue into that until later in life. That, oh my gosh. I think we were talking about it again. And Mom, we were talking about that. And I said, oh yeah, that man. And she said, how do you know it's a man? And that's when I clued in. I'm like, well, that's right. I can see him. There was an old man there. And he was aware of us. And I don't think he was a threat at all. I think he was kind of creepy, But those stories kind of kept me open to the possibility of things like that. I just kind of grew up thinking, well, yeah, and I was outside with the animals a lot. I just always felt like, not weird or anything, but just kind of like I was being watched all the time. Not in a bad way, just that I was not alone. I never felt alone. So fast forward, Mom and Dad get a divorce and all that. And then my mom marries her boss, and he's a rich man. And we go from Leave It to Beaver life over to his big weird house a couple towns over, and it's haunted. And it's but not like good haunted. It's not like stop the fire around the crib. It's more like start the fire around the crib, And I didn't realize until later in life that it had a demon infestation. But there were definitely ghosts involved in it. There's a lot of activity in that house. We call it the Fuerte house. I'm not going to go into the whole story of that because it'll take hours. But if you'd like to hear that story, you can go to Beacon of Light Radio on SoundCloud and find my playlists. And it's there. It's Paranormal Activity and then the Fuerte house. It's a good story. I ended up cleansing that house finally after years. But living in that house and dealing with the constant feeling of dread taught me to turn it on and turn it off. And I think that's why I do that now. I think that if I had not lived in that house, I might have gotten to a place where I just go ahead and see everything that's there, like some mediums do. But I kind of had to do that. I just want to be a normal kid. I just want to live a normal life. I moved in there when I was 14 years old, awkward age. It's okay. So there's black demons running around all over the place. And thanks, Mom. It's great. It went so far as I went and got, he wouldn't let us have the house blessed because he was an atheist and my mom was Catholic. So after church one day with my mom, I filled, they had this, they had the holy water on tap, so I filled up a pickle jar and I went into the bathroom because it was set up at wings. Like my sister and I had this whole wing of the house to ourselves. There was a bathroom and 2 bedrooms and a hallway and a door leading out to the pool. And I went around with the holy water and said, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I just bless this place, and the activity in the upstairs after that stopped. It was in the rest of the house. But all kinds of things happen there. Just to give you an idea, so that wing of the house was upstairs above what used to be a garage. And that garage was made into a pool room with a pool table, like a playroom. And so I'm upstairs. I'm in my room. I'm doing my homework. So that means I have the TV and the music and all the lights on and everything on. Okay. And everybody else is in the pool room. My sister, my mom, and Bill. Everybody lived there. Nobody else home. So I had to go out of my room, down the hallway, down a flight of stairs, around the corner, down another flight of stairs to get to the pool room. If anybody were to leave to go to my room, they'd have to go past me on the stairs. And I was standing there looking at everyone. I told them something. Then I turned around and walked back up to my room. I get to my room. Everything is black. Great. I'm like, okay, I just blew the circuit. I blew the circuit. That's all there is to it. You know, that's it. But I'm standing in the hallway, and the hallway light is still on. And when I blew the circuit, that one went off too. So I realized that, okay, so now I have to walk into the pit, this pit of hell here, and find out how to turn the lights back on. So I flipped the switch. Of course, it doesn't work. And everything on the circuits was like connected to that switch. So I walk into the room and I walk over to the lamp. There are 2 plugs in the house in that room under each window. All of the plugs were pulled out of the wall. So then, of course, I just plugged it back in and then ran the hell out of there, just like a bat out of hell. This is how I lived. I would run out of places. Excuse me, my hair is like tickling my nose. I would run out of places like a bat out of hell all the time in that house. Walking up and down the hallways at night. Full apparition seen by my atheist stepfather who doesn't even believe in God. There was a blonde woman seen by him and my sister. So, he saw her in the kitchen at night, thought it was one of us. But tell you the truth, my stepfather used to walk around naked at night. So me and my sister would get whatever we need by like 7 p.m. and go and hide in our room for the rest of the night and not go down to the kitchen because he'd just come walking in, and I'm like, okay, I'm ruined forever. Thank you. But this story, okay, I'll get this story and then we're going to move on, okay, about the Fuerte house. There's this one hair that's tickling my nose. So I remember my sister, I think it was sometime mid-high school, okay? My sister had this boyfriend. He was a few years older than her, and she would get up. It was before cell phones. She'd get up and call him every morning to wake him up for work. So the way it was set up, there was a phone jack in my room. I had a phone, but her room next to mine didn't. And then there was one in the living room, and it was a family room, and there's the couch against the wall, a end table, and then another couch. Okay, so she had the phone was on the end table. So she got up early. I wasn't up yet, so she couldn't use the phone in my room. And so she figured she would go down into the living room. And so she went down into the living room and she reached over for the phone, and then she turned and saw what she thought was my mom, has blonde hair too, laying on the couch, facing the back of the couch, blonde hair sticking out with this, Afghan. It's like we used to have Afghans, like a crocheted blanket, knitted blanket, just totally covering everything except the top of the head. And so she's like, oh, I will go in Jenny's room. So I remember because she came into my room that morning. So then we get home from school that day, and, well, I'm sitting on the couch, okay, where she saw the thing. And I'm sitting there, and Mom and and Shelly, my sister, are in the kitchen. And, I said, oh, we were kidding around. And I said, yeah, why did you come to my room this morning? She goes, well, because Mom was sleeping on the couch. And she turns to Mom. She goes, Mom, why are you sleeping on the couch? She goes, I wasn't sleeping on the couch. Yes, you were. I saw you. And she was like, so freaked out about it. She's like, I saw you. I almost touched you. She's like, ooh, like I'm sitting right there where it was, and I'm freaking out. Like, oh my God, I hate this house. I don't want to live here anymore. So I would see things all the time. I would feel things. You'd be swimming in the pool and just feel like all of a sudden something was going to hold you under. I mean, just terrible feeling of dread all the time. And so I learned to turn things off. And for a long time, I didn't really do anything psychically, although I did have an interest in the paranormal. Others' experiences, things like that. So then I started having the paranormal shows. And I remember before that, I started reading Sylvia Browne books. And it was right before I got pregnant and married, or married and pregnant. Could have been the other way around. But I was about 25, 26. And I just started reading these Sylvia Browne books. I just couldn't get enough. I just started sucking them down. I read a book in a day. I couldn't wait till the next one came out. I read about 30 of them. And I just didn't really understand the fascination, and then when I got married, he would see me reading the books and he'd say, why are you reading that? If you don't read anything, read the Bible. I'm like, because I do what I want. That's why. And so it was interesting, along the way in reading about the stuff, it was like the fear started to fall away. And I started having more experiences. And it wasn't until my daughter was born, Faith, that I understood why. I always thought it was preparing for her, because when she was born, she was clearly, I don't think I've ever met a more naturally talented medium than her. And she doesn't want to have anything to do with it right now. She's 21. Scares crap out of her. Well, not really, but she just doesn't want to do that. And I said, Faith, you could help people so much. You could help people so much if you wanted to do that on the side, No. But when she was a child, she would say things like, Mommy, did you just see that lady walk through the kitchen table and through the sink? And I'm like, no. But then because I read those books, I kind of just treated it like normal behavior, because I knew the child didn't have a problem. She didn't have any kind of problem. Extremely intelligent. She was so intelligent that at 3 years old, she would cry because she couldn't read the signs when we would drive around town or in the store. And so I taught her to read. And she did. She learned how to read. It was the weirdest thing. And, she would do weird things like, for the longest time, I had to remind her that she wasn't my mother. Okay. Because I swear to God, this child was my mother in another life. I swear to you. She would do the weirdest things. And for about the first 3 years of her life, I had to say, now I'm the mommy now. So you got to let me do it my way. Okay. And she finally got it, but she would do things like 3 years old, I'm cooking chicken. And she pulls her little stool up, her little teeth brushing stool up next to the stove, stands up next to me, and she's like this. You going to cook the chicken that way? And I'm like, oh my God. me out, like, I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I tell her, listen, I'm the mommy now, and you're the baby, so you gotta let me do things my way, okay? And she'd be like, all right. And then she'd snap out of it, and she'd be like, just babble, just little toddler babble. It was the weirdest thing she used to say. She'd snap out of the little singing, and she'd say, remember when I was the mommy and you were the baby and grandma was there? I'm like, no, tell me all about that. She's like, blah, A, B, C, D, it just never got any more information. So Faith would see things. And I learned quickly that when Faith saw something, she saw something. Because it was validated many, many times. And that's fast forward 2007. We had moved to Idaho. Faith and Katie, my husband and I, and Faith was 7, Katie was 4. And we were starting our own construction business. And their father was killed by a drunk driver on the way home from work. Now, I don't want this to be a sad show, so we're fine. It was a long time ago. But, it was very hard, of course. That's a given. But Faith had this really special connection with her father. I was almost a little bit jealous of it at times. And it was another psychic friend who suggested just a couple of years ago to me finally that I told her, I said, she always had this really strong connection with him. And it was not like freaky weird, but just beautiful. Like the world stopped when Dad walked in the door. I mean, it don't have nothing to do with me. And a psychic friend of mine said, well, did you ever stop to think that maybe she knew that her time with him was limited? And I'm like, oh my God, I never got that. I never even thought about that. So, Faith started seeing him immediately. The next day. Even freakier, when he passed away, it was 6:00 on a Friday night. She and her sister were up at my parents', up about 40 minutes north in the mountains. They had like a log home. They used to go up there. It was summertime. They used to go up there for a few days at a time. And she didn't see him that day. She didn't see him leave. She wasn't there. I called my mom to tell her that Bill had passed away that night, and that I was coming for the girls. And my mom was, of course, in shock, and she just started talking about, oh my God, what time did he die? What time did he die? What time did he die? And she kept saying that. I said, I think it was 6:00. And she goes, oh my God. She goes, Faith crashed her bike right at 6:00. She was riding her bike outside and crashed it and rolled down the hill. And that was their big drama over there she was going to tell me about. And then I call and tell her about this. And I think it hit her like a wave. I think it did. I think it hit her like a wave. She knew. And then the next day, and she's 7 years old. The next day, she was out walking in the quarry. They have this rock quarry that they dug into the mountain there. They live on top of a mountain to get the rock to when they were building the house to put on the sides of the house. And, they'd go for walks. And she was walking with Grandpa and I think my brother. And she says, Grandpa, look, there's Daddy. Look, there's Daddy. Daddy, come back. Daddy, come here. And it was like, of course, so sad. And I wasn't there, but they came home and my stepdad was freaked out. He was freaked out. And she said he had the tie-dye shirt on. And he smiled at me and he waved and then he was gone. And everybody else is like, oh man, we gotta get the kids in counseling. This is gonna be bad. She's having delusions and all that stuff. And I'm just looking at her like, and my first thought was, he's active. I just had that thought of like, he's there. And I knew. I just knew. She saw him. And so many more things happened within the first few weeks that were interesting, and the first few months. She saw him in full form, always wearing something different. See, that's the difference. When you see a spirit who's always wearing something different, they're not an earthbound spirit. They're not a ghost. They don't have any signs of injury. They're not upset in any way. That's a visiting spirit of various kinds. So one thing I noticed about every time she saw him, it was never prompted. I never asked her to see him. On purpose, I did that. I didn't want, and when she did see him, I never told her she didn't. And so she kept it. I told her, Daddy, I basically just told her the same thing every time. I said, Daddy's just trying to tell you once again that he's still around and he loves you and that he's visiting you. And, it's like, I didn't see him because that's too hard. I think it was too hard. I saw him in dreams, but not when I was awake. I was just trying to I was on autopilot. And some of the most remarkable times when she saw him, I'll tell you about. I mean, she told me about times where she'd see him sitting on the bench at school on the playground. She'd see him just standing in the yard. It was interesting. And I remember my experience with him. I'll get back to her experience because it's kind of like a grand finale kind of deal. Shortly after he died, it was pretty quiet. And I remember I would lay down with the girls to put them to bed. I just, my fault. I always did that. And so it would take like an hour, I'd lay down with them and put them in the same bed. And I remember I was laying down with them and I was thinking, and I was laying towards them, and it was a face room. Through his face room, you could see the stairway up to the living room area and the kitchen area. And the kitchen light was on, and it shone on that wall there on the stairway. And I was laying there real quiet, just thinking. And I was talking to him in my head. And I said, you know what, look at this. I was just looking at how precious they were. Because, oh my God, so in love with my children. Since day one, I'm pathetic. Okay. I just enjoyed every single second of their lives so far. And even the teenage years, that was hard. But so I'm laying there and I'm looking at the wall. And the light goes off. Now, we had this pit bull. And I was totally against the whole pit bull thing with the babies and everything. And he said, no. You need protection. I'm like, okay. Best dog I ever had. Oh my God. The only thing that dog was dangerous to was like anything smaller than a Cocker Spaniel. She wanted to shake it to death. Anyway, so she was the cinnamon white. She was the Staffordshire Terrier. So protective. If I called that dog, there is no way that dog is not at my side within 30 seconds. Okay? So I'm laying on the bed and the light goes off and and everything at that time upset me. I was just a total baby. It was like, Damn it, now I have to change another light bulb, and I'm stupid, you know? And that went back on. And then it went off. And then it went back on. And then it went off. And it stayed off. And I'm like, okay, so it finally burned out. And then it went back on. And it just kept doing it in such a way that it was like, it kind of freaked me out. So I called Baby Dog. Just called, every time we get scared, we'd call the dog. And she was, so it's like a 4-level house, the way it was set up. So you've got your entry level where the living room and the kitchen is. And then you go upstairs, a flight of stairs to my room area, big suite. From the living room area, you go downstairs to the girls' rooms, and then you go downstairs to the basement. So I'm on the middle level at the girls' rooms, and I called the dog from the top level, and I could hear her jump off her little bed and hurry down the stairs, but stop at the kitchen. I don't know why it scared me. It's like I should have ran up there. Maybe I could have saw him or something, but it scared me for a second. It was just freaking me out. And she stopped in the kitchen. The only way that's going to happen is if somebody's in the kitchen. And I was like, okay, so there's either an intruder in the kitchen. But if there was an intruder in the kitchen, she would have barked and freaked out. I knew he was in the kitchen. I knew it. And I'm thinking to myself, if you're in the kitchen, turn that light back. Do it again. And he did it again. And I'm like, oh my God. And I don't know why it freaked me out. You know, it's just like, why would it freak you out of somebody you spent your life with and then all of a sudden they're not around anymore? So, I mean, why would they suddenly be scary? Doesn't make any sense, does it? But then the light eventually stopped and I called the dog and she came and I knew. Later on, we'd have, I remember one day we'd have different experiences. Like my brother came over. Everybody would come over a lot at that time. And my brother was coming over a lot to hang out with me. And I remember my husband's friend, Jim. It was his best. It was kind of like his partner in crime. He told me never to let him in the house when he wasn't there. I don't know why. And so then I remembered that he was coming after he missed the funeral and he was coming. And I was talking to Bill in my mind because I used to do that all the time. And I would say, oh, I forgot I wasn't supposed to let him in the house when you're not there. And he was really active that evening. He was there. And everybody was there. It was shortly after the light experience. And so we were out on the deck and you're standing in the kitchen. You look through the kitchen window over the sink and there's this big redwood deck in the backyard. We were all hanging out there. And we were sitting out there. And Jim was there with his wife and everything. And I was telling about the light. And they're like, no, I don't believe you. My brother's like, I don't believe you. Let's go check that light. And I said, well, it's worked ever since. It's fine. So he goes and he gets up on one of the chairs above the sink and he starts to unscrew the light bulb. And he says, Fallaw was our last name. And he says, oh no, Fallaw, you're going to have to show me more than that. I don't believe that you're here. And the light bulb, I shit you not. It wasn't a drop. It wasn't a whoopsie. The thing went across the room and shattered on the counter. We're all standing in the living room watching it going. And Bill's friend Jim goes, was that enough for you? And then the same evening, Jim went out to the car and he said he looked up when he was out of the car. He left the front door open. And when he looked up in the front door, he saw Bill standing there. And, that I didn't, because Jim was kind of a tripper, so I didn't know if I should believe that. But there were a lot of things like this that would happen in the beginning. So I think it was right before the funeral. It took a while because there was an autopsy report because, it was drunk driver and was at fault. And so the funeral was delayed. So before the funeral, I remember I was just on autopilot. I was doing things. I was doing laundry. The girls were little, so I was just on it, just 24/7 with them. And I know I walked down the stairs to the second level, and Faith was in her room off to the left. In front of the stairs is Katie's room. I saw Faith sitting in there watching her TV, sitting at her little desk, and she was fine. And I went into Katie's room, and I was sitting on the floor with Katie, folding her clothes. And then, something interrupted the light from the hallway, and I look up, and there's Faith. And she's got this look on her face. It's hard to describe. It's not fear. It's like shock. It's the weirdest thing. Every time she saw him, she had this look. It was just kind of like, it's just weird. And I said, what? And she said, I just saw Daddy. And I said, tell me about it. And she said he was standing in the doorway, and he put his hands on the crack of the door, which he always did that. And he leaned in, and he smiled at me, and then he was gone. And I don't know why I kept asking people this in the beginning. It was just the weirdest thing. I just kept saying it. When he left that morning, I was sleeping. And I didn't see, he asked me something. I sat up. I still had my eyes closed. I answered him. And then he left. And then I remember feeling this weird, eerie feeling. And I got up and I went to the top of the stairs, and all I saw was the car pull away. And I wanted to stop him, but I didn't. Live with that for the rest of your life. But, I wasn't supposed to stop him. But, so what I kept asking everyone, and Faith wasn't even in the house when he left that day. I said, what was he wearing? What was he wearing? And Faith says he was wearing, and it's so interesting because at this time, it's so interesting because she had seen him several times before that. This time, when I asked, he was wearing what he was wearing when he passed away. I didn't know what he was wearing when he passed away. She didn't know. But she says he's wearing, and at the time, everybody wore jean shorts, He was wearing white tennis shoes, blue jean shorts, and a white shirt with blue writing on it. And she says, and it had a kangaroo on it. I consoled her. I said, same thing. He's just telling you he loves you and he's still with us. And that stuck with me. Kangaroo. He was he was a superintendent for a builder in San Diego, and there's a lot of subcontractors, and you get all these t-shirts. I'm like, I don't remember one with a kangaroo on it. I did laundry. It must have been laundry day. And later on, so a couple months go by. Lots of other experiences, but a couple months go by. And I find pictures of when we went to the zoo. He had a dark blue shirt that had a kangaroo on it. And I'm like, weird. So 2.5 months go by, and I get the autopsy report. So I go out in the garage to read the whole terrible thing. Found out he had cancer Didn't even know it. And so it turned out over the years that it was a blessing that he just went quick, because that guy never would have gone to the doctor. Never would have done that. But it's totally devastating to the entire family. But so I go out in the garage to read the autopsy report. And I get through the whole terrible thing. And I get to the end where it describes him. It describes what he was, looked like and what he was wearing. And it said he had white tennis shoes, blue jean shorts, a white shirt with blue writing on it, said Elston Masonry, and it had a kangaroo on it. And I went, oh, she saw him. There's no frickin' way she saw him. You can't convince me otherwise. He was there. And of course I lost it after that. But but she wasn't home. I didn't see him leave. No one saw him after that. We never received the clothes again. She saw him. And, from that day forward, when she spoke about something, I didn't question it. And I purposely did not try and get information out of her. I just treated it the way that I told you I did. And because I didn't want her to start doing it for attention, I just wanted, if there was anything passed on to me, I wanted it to be authentic. And so there were many times that she saw him. And one of the best stories I could share with you was, it was time, and some of you have heard this before, but this is a good one. It was time to take my ring off. Probably, I don't know, 3-4 months. I don't even know. And there's another good story too, but I kept wearing the jewelry he had given me. I've never been big on, and I wish I had, now that everybody's trying to accumulate gold. I wish, I never really cared much about real jewelry unless someone had given to me. It's always the sentimental value of everything that is important to me. But he had given me certain pieces, a promise ring, a ring for Christmas. He would give me things. And so I started wearing those things. And every time I would wear it, a stone would fall out. And I was getting so pissed. I was like, stop it. Okay? Stop it. And so I had, one by one, I had to put those things in the jewelry box. And they still haven't been repaired. I'll repair them for the girls someday. But so it was time to take my wedding ring off. I went upstairs into the room, closed the door. And like I told you, there's the living room and the kitchen, and then you've got a flight of stairs. There's bathroom in my room. So the girls were down in the living room. Katie was on the couch and Faith was sitting on the floor. They sit on the floor, watch TV. Okay, and at that time, these kids, I could be standing right next to them, saying their name over and over and over, and there's just nothing. They're totally mesmerized by the television set, okay, when they're watching TV. So I knew they're fine. I'm going to go up in my room for a little bit and do this. And so I sat on the bed. I took it off, to put it back on. I took it off, put it back on. And then I was like, okay, this is stupid. Just take it off. So I took it off, and I walked across the room. I put it in the jewelry box, and I came in and sat back down on the bed. And then I was sitting there on the bed, and I was talking to him in my mind, not out loud. And all I said was, I wonder if you still have your ring on in heaven, like a replica of it. And I wonder if you wear that. And then I sat there and listened. It's like a minute later, knock at the door. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm done now. I didn't cry or anything. I did pretty good. And then so I opened the door, and it's Faith, and she's got that look on her face. I went, what? She goes, I just saw Daddy. I said, tell me what happened. And she goes, well, I was watching TV, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and she was referencing to her right shoulder. And a 7-year-old's not going to know what hand the ring's on. So this is another thing. So she goes, I felt something on my shoulder, and I looked over, and there was a hand on my shoulder. And she said, I looked up, and it was Daddy, and he smiled at me, and then he was gone. And I did the same thing. Oh, honey, that's great. It's just it's such a blessing that you get to see him, and he comes to see you, and he's just telling you he loves you and everything else. And she goes, okay. And there's like a landing there. And so she's supposed to walk to go down the stairs, and she turns around and she goes, oh, and Mommy? And I said, yeah. She goes, he still has his ring on. And I'm like, okay. And I closed the door, and then I just lost it, Then I was just like, you can't make this, you can't write that better than that. And I'm a writer. I mean, I can't write that good. That was good. I mean, that was really good. And the shoulder, he would put his left hand on her right shoulder, and she would have saw it. And I was just like, you can't deny that. You can't deny that. She saw him. And it was interesting. So throughout this period of time, lots of things happened. Like, I think it was before I took my ring off. I was wearing his ring. First thing I did is when I got the ring back, I went and bought a nice gold chain. I put it on the chain. I was wearing it. It was comforting. And so what I would do is there was this little vanity in our room that it was an antique, and he refinished it for me. And so when I would go and take a shower, I would take it off, and I would put it on the vanity, and I would stretch the chain out all nice and straight. And I remember this one particular time. I'm pretty sure I closed all the doors, and the kids didn't go in my room. I went, took a shower, and I came out, and the ring was separated from the chain over in one corner of the table. And the chain was in a pile on the other corner. And then, like, I get dressed, I go down there. Okay, you don't touch my stuff. You guys don't do that. I don't want you going in my room and touching my jewelry, things like that. And everybody just swore up and down. And when your kids are lying, they really looked like they had not been in my room. And I was like, okay. I said, you know what? I'm going to test it. And so I put it back on the chain. And I put it on the table, and I stretched it out just like I had it before. And I left it there. And I said, now nobody goes into my room. And so we were in the living room for about an hour or two. My brother came over. It was in the evening. And I really was making sure that no one went in my room. And I told my brother the story. He said, have you checked it? And I'm like, no. He goes, are you sure nobody's gone up? I said, yeah. He goes, let's go see. So I shit you not. I go up there. Same thing. It's off the chain. The ring is over here. And the chain is in a pile. And he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, I know. And he's like, what do you think he's trying to tell you? And I said, I know what he's trying to tell me. He's trying to tell me stop wearing his ring. He started to move on, stop wearing his stuff, But, and I just like get mad. I'm like, I'll do it when I'm ready. Do what I want. And so she saw him in full form, probably for a good 6, 7, 8 months, something like that. And so she really didn't go through the loss until later. We went through it right away, but she just felt like he was her little buddy. He was her buddy. He was there all the time, And then after about 6 months, it was harder to see him. She said he turned into more of a brownish color, she said. And then I remember I was out on the front porch, and my kids, you had to drag them inside. It was like, okay, get in the house. Okay, it's time to come inside now. Okay, it's time to come inside now. Okay, over and over again. And then you had to go outside. Then you got to get mad. And then you got to tell them you're all in trouble if they don't go inside. Okay. So I go out in the front porch, and I'm standing there. And so we've got this front porch, and then you've got the garage and the driveway and the grass they're all playing on and everything. And I'm standing there, and out of the corner of my eye, I see like half a body. These 2 legs just take 1, 2 steps. Corner of the eye right there in front of the garage. And Faith, I look up and I lock eyes with Faith. She goes, you just saw Daddy. And I'm like, I did. So she was looking at him. He was there. I walk out. I'm standing there, and I just happened to pick it up in the peripheral. And then I look over straight at her, and she's looking right at me. And so if you think they don't live on and they don't visit, they do. It's just easier to see them in the beginning because their vibration is closer to ours. It's rising. It rises very fast when you pass away. But it continues to rise over a period of time to get faster and faster, higher and higher, and then it's hard for us to perceive it. Doesn't mean it's not there. In the very beginning, it's very easy to move objects like he did, to make the lights flicker at the funeral home, to turn lights off and on, to play a certain song on the station. I don't know how they do that. Make the TV flip channels, stuff like that. But I knew that it wasn't something that I could abuse, although at times I wanted to ask her. But I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't be able to trust it when it came. But do know that I think I've had more experiences in my lifetime with those that have passed away and gone to heaven than ghosts. For some reason, I think it's easier for me to see that. Now, trust me, I could have saw him if I wanted to. I know that. I think it's just too hard, I saw him in dreams a lot. And I knew that I'd go into meditation. I could talk to him anytime I wanted to. I rarely did. It was only usually when it concerned the children because it's hard. And sometimes, people say, well, I haven't seen my dad. He passed away. It's because it's hard. Somewhere inside of us, we choose not to. Just because we're doing okay and we just need to keep going. But I was so thankful that we had those experiences. I mean, Katie, my youngest, she's seen things too. But usually strangers. She's very emotional like me, so it's usually strangers that she sees. So it's funny when Faith walks up to me now. It's very rare. It's usually when there's some bad guy in the house that'll wander in. You got like 3 mediums in the house, and you got stuff coming in all the time. And the reason for that is, I did this meditation, this radio show one time about, it's called Through the Eyes of the Spirit. And I wanted to know what we look like to ghosts. And because I had this paranormal investigation in this house, and I'll tell you about that one day. That's amazing. It was like a subway. And it was along this white river of energy and ghosts. And at certain times of year, this white river of energy would arc up into my friend's living room or kitchen. And these spirits would just get off. And sometimes they'd hang around. And we did a paranormal investigation. I have like so many amazing EVPs from that. And I was crossing people over like you wouldn't believe. And I know it wasn't just me making it up, because I got EVPs that verified all of them. And, so I'm kind of like that. Like, over time, I'm going to say, okay, well, how can we verify this information? I think my husband knew that, because the way that he did things with his visitations, I couldn't deny it. When he showed up that day for no reason in the doorway, in the clothes that he was wearing when he passed, and I just happened to ask her what he was wearing, and then it matched up to the autopsy report 2.5 months that came 2.5 months later. That's good. I mean, you can't argue with that. And you can't convince me that there is nothing else. Like my atheist stepfather that we just rot in the ground. That is absolutely not true. We do live on. This is a blip on the radar. And to them, no time has passed, really. A little bit. They don't stop loving you. They can't visit everybody. And they do. And it just depends on if there's somebody around open enough to see it, to relay the message. And, that's why, mediums get a bad rap, okay? Yeah, there are a lot of people out there who they're not very careful about psychic protection. They're not really centered with God. They're not, so they leave themselves open to a lot of negative energy and entities and tricksters and things like that. That does happen. But for the most part, I'd like to say that most mediums that I've known truly have a true divine intent and calling to be that interpreter, to be that link between you and your loved ones. And there's nothing more healing than that. There is nothing more healing than that when you are hurting. That's why I taught the class. And if you'd like to take that class, it's at jenniferfallaw.com, the interdimensional meditation class on mediumship. I taught that class because in the beginning, I didn't go to counseling. I knew what I had to do. And I had to get over it. I knew that. And I've always bounced back pretty quick. I've got a lot of faith. And but in the beginning, I just needed something. I needed somebody who could talk. It's like they said, "Oh, you need to go to counseling." Just I'm like, I'm fine. I'm not having any problems. I'm fine. They're like, "Oh, you should go anyway." Just I'm like, I don't want to sit around and wallow in it. And I'm basically, I said, if you can't talk to him, then you can't help me. And there was a place in town at the time that I would go, and it sucks that all these places always go under. But it was like a psychic, it was like crystals in the front and all kinds of books and neat things. And then in the back they had these little rooms that were probably meant for like massage rooms or something. And each one had a psychic in it. And I would go in there maybe once a month, every couple months. Because I wanted somebody else to tell me something, possibly match up with what I have. Just something. I just needed something, and they gave it to me. Even as small as one day I was on the way there, and I sat down with this lady. It was interesting. She used a sign language dictionary as kind of like a cue. But I saw her. She was going like this and talking to me and talking to him and talking to me. She didn't need that dictionary. But it was just kind of like, it was like something, if she got stuck, she would ask him to point her in the right direction. It was weird. But I remember I came in there one day and the car light had gone on. And it was time to get an oil change. And it's like I told you before, in the beginning, I was just such a pain in the ass. I was like, any little thing that went wrong, I was like, damn it, now I got to do that. Because I would do all the girl stuff, and he would do all the guy stuff. He would take care of the cars and the trash and the yard. Okay, now I'm doing everything, and I wouldn't ask anybody for help. And so I when I got to the parking lot there, I was going inside, and I'm like, damn it, now I got to do that too. So I go inside, and I sit down with this lady, and she's like, she goes, you kissed him. I said, what? At the funeral. You weren't supposed to, but you kissed him. And I'm like, I did. Because everybody lean in, you forget, you kiss him on the cheek. I did that. And she told me. I'm like, I did that. And then I'm like, you know what? I bet a lot of people do that. That was probably easy. That was probably a lucky guess. And then she told me everything else, like, you're doing a good job and this and that, and he's been around and all that stuff. And then all, I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not really here. And then she looks at me and she goes, he wants you to get the oil changed now. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, I'm good. You're still with me. I'm good. I can keep going. And so it was, there's a lot of people out there who are real religious, and religion is beautiful. Whatever brings you closer to God. But not everybody responds to that. And some people just need something. And so God sends out his helpers. Make sure you find one who's God-centered. There are mediums, there are teachers, there are people in all walks of life with all different principles and all different ways to teach that may just be that person that moves you forward. I've been in that position. It was a beautiful thing. I remember I went to this young girl, and I swear to God, I've never seen anybody so filled with so much joy. I mean, she was just like so joyful. And I was just like, and she said, you're going to write a book. I'm like, I don't write. She's like, you're going to write a book. You're going to write, there's 5 of them. I'm like, and she goes, you don't know it now. You're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I'm like, and I remember that over there. I'm like, I am totally not a force to be reckoned with. I'm like a mess right now, lady, and I'm not writing no books. And so I leave. But I thanked her. She was just wonderful. And really young. I mean, she's really young. And you know what? I used to be really passive. And after he passed away, I became stronger. It's almost like I got a little piece of him in there, you know? And I would say there are times over the years when I look back and I said, you know what? Yeah, I am a force to be reckoned with. Yeah. And did I become a force to be reckoned with because she told me that day? Maybe. Maybe it was always meant to be. But your loved ones are absolutely alive. They are absolutely visiting you. And don't listen to anybody who tells you not that that's bad. Especially not your loved ones. I mean, if you're going around inviting everybody and their mother into your house and playing with all kinds of Ouija boards and toys and you get bad guys coming in, yeah, that's not good. That's like sitting in the middle of, the ghetto naked and with a big purse of money and expecting nobody to hurt you or take your stuff, It's like, that's crazy. You got to have protection, and the best place that you can gravitate towards is God. I mean, that is who you really are. And all this other stuff is just experience. And, even when you think you are, you're never really alone. I have all kinds of paranormal experiences to share with you, but I think that's it for tonight. I'm going to go have dinner with my wonderful husband that I waited 7 years for. And I hope all of you have a wonderful weekend. Memorial Day. Go and have fun. You deserve it. You know what? And that's us over here in the house lately. Going through all this stuff for the last year and a half. Even before that. I mean, we were just like waiting for relief. Take it. It is time for us to accumulate as much joy and as much happiness as we possibly can. Take the opportunities. If it doesn't enrich your life, if it doesn't make you happy, forget it. That's what we're doing over here. We're going to go have a whole bunch of fun. We're going to go out on the boat this weekend and explore the coastline. Thank you guys so much for being with me, and I'll see you next time on Fallawsophy. Go to jenniferfallaw.com if you'd like a reading with me. And I do have a new class coming up on June 7th at 5 p.m. to teach you how to start remote viewing and to take a look at your own past lives. It's called The Viewing Room. You can get that at jenniferfallaw.com. Get your spot right now. Purchase a reading with me there or get a healing. All right. That's about it. Thanks so much. Bye.